Hello, everybody, and we are live. So it is a big week. We've had an Easter break. You've had your spring break. There's been a Passover break. People are coming back to work. And indeed, we've had a ceasefire as well. So what's not to celebrate? What a great week we're having. And we've got a great show for you lined up today. I've been away for a few weeks, and in my absence, Laurie has been doing an amazing job talking about AI. We hope you've really enjoyed those shows. People coming in from all over the world. Fazine, great to see you. It's Benevo Wednesday. Evie, hello to see you all the way from Spain. People coming in from all over the world, which is absolutely wonderful to know. Dana's in the house. People are coming in. We've got such a great show for you lined up today. We're going to be talking about moving global mobility to talent mobility. So moving from global mobility to talent mobility. And we're talking about how you can use assignments to drive succession and leadership readiness. And waiting backstage, we've got the amazing Michelle Durkin, formerly of this parish, my former co-presenter on The View from the Top, but now with Organon. And she's going to tell us all about the really exciting work that she is doing there. So you know how it works, everybody. Do join in the conversation. I know lots of you are already. Write in the comments box. As Nicole says, hit the like button. We'll get into that in more detail, all those buttons we want you to hit. But it's just great to see you. We are live right now on LinkedIn. We are live on YouTube. And of course, we are available on Spotify. So much exciting stuff out there for you. And of course, you may want your CPE codes, and we've got CPE codes. Of course we have. If you want them from our good friends at Worldwide ERC, there they are, the GMS and the CRP codes. And if you want them from HRCI or from SHRM, then our good friends at Rocket Mortgage have provided those too. So those are the codes. I'll leave them up for a moment or two so you can screenshot it or jot them down or whatever you want to do. But make sure you get those codes. Evan is in the house. Hi there from Michigan. Hope it's not too cold out there. I tell you, it's really gloriously sunny where I am at the moment. So we're carrying on the theme in a way that Michelle is talking about moving to talent mobility. The week after, we've got the amazing David Carmichael from from CGI, and he's talking about moving from the how to the why of global mobility. So not just about how, but about why. And he's talking about how you can make mobility more intentional and what they do at CGI. So that's going to be a fascinating conversation. Do make sure you join us. Meanwhile, what has been going on in the wonderful world of global mobility in the last 7 days? Well, I'll tell you what, why don't we take a look? So in a moment, we're going to share all the promotions, all the new jobs, all the job opportunities, and any other news in our industry. So you know how it works. As we say congratulations to everybody, hit the heart button, hit the like button, and hit the applause button. So there we have it. And if you've got a new job, congratulations. You've been promoted, congratulations. And if you're looking for a job, well, you saw there's loads of jobs out there. I saw there's one at Lego. How cool is that? But there's lots of cool jobs out there. So if you're looking, then hopefully one of those jobs will be right for you. Now, if you're hiring, let us know of any jobs that you've got, and we'll do whatever we can to promote them. And if you've got a bit of good news you want to share, maybe you've been promoted, you've got a new job, let us know. And again, we'll try and give you your couple of minutes of fame as we put it out there to the world. In terms of other things, I should say that just last week, I and in fact Julia were at the launch of the OPGM, the Organization for Professionals in Global Mobility. It's a new not-for-profit body which is providing a certified qualification in global mobility. It's providing events, it's providing advisory work and all that sort of good stuff. And it is a fascinating event. The event was very well attended, and there's a real buzz in the room, which I felt was super exciting. So if you're interested, do go on to opgm.org and sign up if you'd like to become a member. Now, I will give you a little tip, okay? To become a certified OPGM professional, you do have to take an exam. You have to take and pass an exam, okay? But the good news is, if you're going and you qualify to be a fellow or a member by years of service within our industry, which many of our listeners will do, then you do not have to take that exam if you actually sign up by the end of May. So that's just a word to the wise. If you want to get involved, there's probably some benefit in getting involved sooner rather than later. Anyway, we're now going to talk about immigration. And as ever, we have backstage with us the amazing Julia Onslow-Cole. So you know how it works, everybody. Hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button as we welcome to our stage Julia Onslow-Cole.
Hi, Brian.
Hey, Julia, how you doing?
I'm very well. Nice to see you back. Laurie did a brilliant job.
I've missed everybody. Yeah. Oh. So anyway, Julia, I know you and I met up in real life at the launch of OPGM the other week.
Yeah, it was great.
8 days ago or so. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, what are we going to be talking about today in the wonderful world of immigration?
Well, as you mentioned, there's fantastic news last night that the US and Iran had agreed this 2-week ceasefire. And hopefully this will lead to a full end to the conflict. And I know the last few weeks I have been just talking about the Middle East, but there has been a lot going on. And I think for global mobility leaders, it has been a real focus. On Monday, the results of the EMEA Business Group survey came in, and the EMEA Business Group is this amazing group that give out geopolitical information. They have a wonderful leader called Nenad, who's really an authority of the world on geopolitics, and particularly in the region. And their survey is quite important. And I would say, really, we should really be looking at this because they have a lot of companies, particularly large companies. So the companies that they surveyed, they asked them if they had any formal crisis management plans. And 48% said they had none. And I think that's really actually quite shocking, isn't it? I mean, I found that quite shocking. And then they were saying that the 41%, which was the highest of all the different percentages for this question, were dealing with cases on a case-by-case basis. And that's what we said throughout the crisis, that's what companies were doing. It was very much a case-by-case basis. So that wasn't any surprises there. And then they were saying that of 67% of the companies, the final decision about whether to evacuate or move someone was rested with the regional leader. And this is something that we experienced during the last few weeks, where sometimes there's a little bit of a disconnect between the global leader and the regional leader. And it's really important that there isn't that disconnect. But sometimes we've noticed that information, for example, is going to the global leader, but it doesn't get down to the regional leader very fast. Yet they're the ones that are making the decisions on the ground. And then 80% of the companies surveyed said that, that there wasn't any formal plan about evacuating. It was simply on request. And also people who wanted to work remotely, most of them were granting that. And then 62% said that when they did, when individuals did want to leave, they were actually supporting their family, which is good. But then this goes to the question that you should really all get this in your crisis management policy. I mean, you should have a plan and you should have a policy. Also, this morning, another company released a survey which was predominantly for companies operating in Saudi. And this was for CEOs. And they were saying that for CEOs in Saudi, their real priority was the safety of staff and business continuity. And I think that could be said across the region. But they were saying that whilst in Saudi, the numbers of companies that were putting travel restrictions on individuals was the same regionally. They were saying for allowing remote working, Saudi was slightly less. So remote working regionally is at about 88%. So 88% of companies in the whole of the Middle East region are fine with remote working, but with Saudi, the Saudi-based companies, it was 65%. So that's quite interesting. And then over 50% of the companies in Saudi that did have a crisis management plan, it was being activated. And then there was a lot of questions in the survey about, will this affect your investment in the region? And I think what everyone is saying, really, it's, hopefully this will be the end of the crises, and hopefully there won't be too much impact on long-term investment in the region, but obviously it's going to be dependent on how quickly everything settles down. And then finally, I just want to say that there are just normal government updates on immigration coming through. I'm monitoring those for you. I'm picking them out. They're important. And I did see one this morning that I thought I should mention to everyone, which was Oman. So in Oman, there's going to be a mandatory savings scheme for foreign employees. And this means that employers, the headline is that they have to take 9% of each employee's basic salary and put it in a regulated savings fund.
Wow. That's quite
now, it's much more complicated than that, because there are things you can set off against it. But it's going to be introduced in phases, and it's going to be starting this year. So if you have any employees in Oman, you really need to know about this. And Fragman has put out some alerts with some more details. So anyway.
And local savings plans they have to invest into?
Yes, yes.
So if they then leave a few years later, their money is in a Omani savings plan?
Well, it's quite complicated. It's a sort of regulated savings fund. But as I say, you can set off other amounts. But it's just that, I think just at this moment, it's just been announced. Everyone just should really understand what it is.
Absolutely. Julia, thank you so much for that update. It's great seeing you, and
lovely to see you.
It's the start of some good news in the Middle East region.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorely needed. So anyway, thank you so much, Julia. We're now going to move on. We've got Meredith Morris backstage, who's going to be giving us a policy and perhaps some practical advice. So everybody, you know how it works. Please hit the heart button, hit the like button, and hit the applause button. Hey, Meredith.
Hey, Brian. Welcome back.
Thanks. I've missed you.
Yeah, I missed you too. And I've been having a good time. Lori and I kind of hijacked the show last week. So yeah,
Yeah,
it
I
was good.
heard. I saw it actually on catch up. Amazing.
Yeah.
Oh,
Hey, everyone out there.
a lot of really good AI stuff coming out over the last couple of weeks there.
Oh, it's just incredible. I know. And I had fun showing you guys what I learned yesterday. So that was a kick this morning. Yeah. So, well, and Julia's
Oh,
update was really
yeah,
good.
back to
Oh,
the
yeah.
everyday. What's our news?
Wow. With so much going on, I don't know if I can overshadow what Julia just went through, because obviously that's just a major event in US history that's happening, and impacting a lot of organizations. But, I'm going to talk about basically a house rule. So I've got to look at my notes because I want to make sure that I get, the wording of this correct. So basically, what's going on is that Congress is on the verge of passing the most aggressive housing reform in over 50 years. 50 years. So this is called the 21st Century Road to Housing Act. And this has been, it's basically sailed through our House. 390 said yes to this bill. And in the Senate, 89 versus 10. This is a rare event of bipartisan fervor. It's the first time Democrats, Republicans, independents are all aligned on this. But basically what the bill does and what the goal of it is, it's to stop what they're calling these Wall Street megalords from basically outbidding families for single family homes, which has been going on for years and years and years. So the bill's put some current definitions in it, right, of an institutional investor. And that definition is so broad that it's actually capturing relocation management companies in its terminology.
Okay.
Well, that's a problem, because one of the events that happens, and it's like one of almost the last taxable events that we have that companies can take advantage of, is basically carving out the home sale programs. So the buyer value option and the guaranteed buyout. So that's basically one of the benefits that a lot of organizations offer to the populations to really support their talent mobility goals. But what's going to happen is that it's going to make these companies illegal to operate within basically days. So this is going through. So what does that mean for us? What's going on? So and I'm going to read this off. So in Title IX, Section 901, the law targets any for-profit entity that manages or holds single-family homes. The threshold is 350 or more homes. So there is potential for, some of the larger RMCs may bank on that, or depending on, a client program, right? Yeah. I mean, that's big. So what is that? What does that mean? So it basically, the result of it is that if they hold more than 350 homes and they take on a title of 351st home, there's major penalties that can be applied. And that penalty is $1 million up to 3 times the home value. $1 million up to 3 times the home value.
Wow.
Yeah. So the clock's ticking. I know WERC has gotten involved. A lot of the organizations and the relocation councils, I've seen lots of emails flying through.
So who's this going to affect?
This is really going to affect the corporations, and it's going to affect their policies and their benefits of what they offer in their current programs. And some of these companies that have these large home sale programs, and maybe they have it with one single provider, if that provider has 350 homes in inventory, and then that could affect them, because the RMC is going to have to walk away from the 351st home sale. They're going to have to either refer it out or do something different. And I would think that if I was on the corporate side of it, not that I can speak from that, but I would be evaluating my program, and it may drive companies to, maybe have to look at, another provider, bringing in an optional provider to support part of their population, just so that threshold doesn't hit. Because if you're a large company and you have, thousands of moves, and the benefit that you offer, it could be impactful. So yeah, so there's a lot of risk that's happening right now. But I think really the bottom line is that, the bill was meant to stop these megalords. It was meant to help, these younger generations, single families that haven't been able to buy these homes. They've been driving up the market. It's really hard to come in if you're a first-time home buyer here in the US and you have an FHA loan that's subsidized, and the homeowner gets a cash offer. They don't have to have like the home looked at. It doesn't matter what condition it's in, and so it doesn't make it affordable or equitable. So I can understand why they did it. However, there's a loophole in it, and now it's affecting our industry. So yeah,
so
big stuff, a mouthful.
Where do you think this will end up? Where do you think? How do you think this will play out?
I think the bill is going to pass. There is an opportunity to possibly have further wording put into the bill, but if it does, I don't see that that's going to happen before the bill passes. That's my personal opinion. I'm not saying that that's probably what's going to happen, but my personal opinion is looking at the amount of votes that came through and how fast that one bill was able to get through, the Senate and the House, and is sitting with, President Trump for signature to be put into an executive order. I'm not sure that we'll be able to get that qualification language put into the bill fast enough. And I believe it'll be another battle, just like what we had with household goods when they took the tax credits away on that, on some of those specific relocation elements. So, our industry has a lot more work to do, I guess.
So this isn't law yet, but is due to be passed as law.
It's due to be passed as law, and it's happening very quickly and moving very fast.
Okay. Well, Meredith, thank you so much for that update. We have backstage with us Michelle Durkin, formerly of this parish. We are so excited to have her back on the show. So you know how it works. Hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button, and let's bring onto the stage Michelle Durkin. Hey, now, Michelle, I'm hoping you can hear me.
I can't hear you, Brian. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I tell you, everybody in the audience, we have had a nightmare. I was about to say we've had a nightmare. We're having a nightmare. I don't know what's happened there. Oh, my God. We've been having a nightmare backstage with Michelle's connection coming and going. Well, she will rejoin in a moment. But I tell you, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Here she comes back. Let's bring her back. Hey, Michelle.
I can hear you now.
Cool. I'll just say what a nightmare we were having, and then that happened. So,
I know. Yeah. Anyway, I'm so happy to be here.
Enough of the interesting times. Okay. Anyway, Michelle, you were on the show with us when we first launched back in COVID days. I mean, how does it feel coming back?
It feels great. It feels great. So excited to be back here. I have to be honest. Being home during COVID, it was so nice to sort of have that sense of community. And I think it's been harder and harder for me to be able to log in at 11 o'clock in New Jersey. So I'm so glad I was able to carve out the time to be here with you today.
That was crazy. It was 6 years ago now. I mean, kids who were born at that time are now in school.
They're graduating. That's how fast it went.
I know. Oh God. I mean, we look back, and I tell you, I remember thinking to myself in COVID times that I know it'll be well over when I put my hand into a pocket of a coat and I pull up a mask and I think, oh my God, did I used to wear that all the time? And I think, we're now in those days. Anyway, Michelle, a huge amount of water has passed under the bridge since those days. So you were with us at Geneva when we launched. You've been with with Teva in an in-house role before that. So tell us about what's happened in your career since those happy days of those happy clappy days of COVID.
Of COVID days, yeah. So when I was with, you're right. I had been with Teva in a corporate role. I had been with Honeywell in a corporate role, and with KPMG in their client services group. But fast forward to the time that I was with you, I was an independent contractor, and I spent a few years as an independent contractor working on all different size projects with RMCs and in-house. And one of those projects last year led me to where I am today at Organon in a full-time role. So kind of hung up my consulting hat for now, I guess I say, because you never know. But yeah, that was an amazing ride, and thrilled to be part of this organization here at Organon now.
So tell me about Organon, because
it's not a household name.
I'll try and think how to say that politely, but certainly it might be in other people's household, but in mine it hasn't quite.
Yeah. So Organon, we spun off. Yeah, we've spun off from Merck. It's coming up on 5 years ago, so I think most people would know that name. So Organon is a pharmaceutical company that is solely focused on women's healthcare. So it's a pretty cool organization to be a part of. In fact, last month we were given off International Women's Day. The company was shut down. So really focused on women's healthcare across the globe. So love their sort of mission and what we're doing.
Cool. And Ida, tell me about mobility there.
So the role that I'm in, the role that I'm in is a newly created role. And I do lead mobility, but my title is actually Director of Mobility Strategy and Program Lead. So while I do have overall oversight to global mobility, I spend most of my time really focused on not only the mobility strategy, but that link into talent management and talent and succession planning. So yes, I'm working on policies and sort of those things, sort of strategic, and how do we become a better partner and value added COE to the wider HR organization. We don't have a very large population of expats, to be honest with you. We probably have about 20 expats and another 24 one-way moves. So the program itself isn't very big, but the direction that we are now steering this ship is different.
Okay. I love the fact you've got Director of Mobility Strategy, because so many people have got titles of, Director of Global Mobility or Head of Global Mobility or Mobility Lead, but it's less often we see the word strategy in there. Was that something that was there before? Was that something you put in when you joined? And tell me a bit about the why of that.
Yeah, it was not here previously. It is new. And the reason was really about, creating, if you go back to, even, I can't speak to the Merck time, but at Organon, the use of mobility had been very reactive, right? Business leaders needing somebody in a country and just moving them, and not a lot of thought about what they were going to be doing in 2 or 3 years. And in some cases, there are legacy Merck people that have been now on assignment for 10 years. I think there's one person for 13 years. And so really it's now about, we've got to figure out what we're doing with this 16 or 17, 18 people that we have that are out there now that don't really truly have a succession plan in place. What role are they coming back to next? Are they going to localize? Are they going to, train, find a local to succeed them? So I'm working on those plans right now. And then as we move forward, really, it is about pushing the businesses to be more thoughtful about mobility and using mobility as a talent strategy. And what I mean by that is, not just sending that person, but like, where are they going to go? What are they going to be doing? Who's going to succeed them? And when we look at those folks that we have on assignment today, or that, well, generally we'll talk about the assignees, what is their career path specifically? Because those folks that we are sending are generally top leaders of the organization. So through this role, I mean, it's not just mobility, but I am really am starting to learn all about succession planning at the executive leadership level, and one level down, and eventually one level down from there. So it's looking at that executive leadership team and their direct reports and saying, okay, who's ready for their next job? Who needs another year or two? What skills do they need? Do they need a development plan? Do they need an international assignment? And really then, eventually cascading that down even further and further into the organization. So it's still sort of in growth mode, but it really is sort of aligning the talent strategy, talent management, performance development to mobility.
What I'm loving about this, it ties in actually so well with the show we're doing next week with David Carmichael.
Heard that, yeah.
Is that you're not so much focusing on the how, but on the why. And in a way, that should be the first question whenever anybody in the line says to you that they need to move, Joe from A to B, is the first issue shouldn't be how am I going to do that? The first issue should be why are we doing that? And I suspect in many, many companies, they never get to that why. They're so busy on the how, they never raise the bar to the why. So my question to you is, how do you do that? How do you actually take one step back and say, before we get to how, let's talk about why?
So there's a couple things that we're doing. I think it's really in the business justification. Why are they going? Obviously, we're looking at cost. But the other thing that I think is different to the other organizations is we're looking at our company's location strategy, right? And where are we going, and where are we growing, and where do we need people? So I think it's putting in those guardrails to say, why is this person going? Mapping out that succession plan at the outset. It might not stick in 3 or 4 years, but let's have that conversation now where we think they're going to be. What might their next role be? And then again, tying back to that location strategy of where is Organon growing? Where do we see the business growing? Where do we need people? And that's actually coming into effect in a lot of our one-way transfers. Again, the businesses can be very reactive, and they haven't, it's sort of retraining them how to think about mobility and moving talent around and why they're doing it. So they're not easy discussions, I'll tell you, right? A lot of these business leaders and HR business partners, this is what they've done. And to sort of mobility come in now and say, hold on, we're changing the philosophy here a little bit. There's some change management to it. And like I said, it's still work in progress.
So, actually, Christian made an interesting point. Let's just pull that one up again. He said, and why is it Joe and not someone else? And just to talk about that point, because we were saying it's about moving from how to why. Mm-hmm. And I sort of get that. But actually, what Christian is getting at is that actually there's another thing, is there's also a who question.
Sure.
So, it may well be that it is right to move someone from A to B. So we don't have to question the move itself. Right. But then you can get into the question of, well, actually, who should it be? Is that something that you're also getting involved in? And how do you get involved with that?
Well, I think it's looking at their career progression, their personal, right? It's not just about Organon, but also about that person's personal career goals. Are they aligned? Do they want to be on assignment? Do they want to leave their home country for 3-5 years? Not everybody does. So I think it's really understanding the person's personal career goals, the company career goals, their skill sets. I think there are a few ways to look at who that is, right? Is it Joe? Is it George? It's not always an easy decision. Sometimes, right, the business will come say we have a need. They don't always have a name. It's just we have a need and they want to explore it. The other thing I will add to this, sort of the feasibility of it all, is really the visa part of it. Because sure, in most cases we can get a visa for somebody. But what Organon hasn't done a very good job of is looking into that 5-year, 6-year, 7-year sort of crystal ball to say, how many extensions can we get? Because once we're out of extensions, then what are we going to do with them? So take it back to the, initial planning and that business justification, and really doing our visa feasibility checks for how long somebody can realistically stay in country, and what does that mean for the company and that person.
So, I mean, that's interesting. I mean, you mentioned extensions, so that sort of rather implied you've got a few, how do I put this politely, perpetual assignees that have been sort of extended and extended. How are you dealing with that? And are you trying to sort of localize people, or get rid of these sort of these multiple extensions?
It's in play right now, working with the businesses to, look at sort of localization packages. What does a net to net comparison look like? What are our options? Does that person want to localize? You know what, in some of these cases, if push comes to shove, they might wind up leaving the organization, because we don't have the next role for them. It might not be our decision. It might be their decision in the end. So unfortunately, these are going to be some tough analysis, tough reviews. What's the cost impact to the company? Does it align again with the goals of that individual? Because that is a sort of a differentiator here, I think, at Organon, is that employees own their own career, right? We own our conversations with our managers. It is up to us to talk about where we want to go, what do we want to do, what do we want to learn.
What does that mean in practice? You own your career.
So it's really, it's not my manager. It's me, I think, going to my manager and saying, hey, I would love to learn more about succession planning. When I got here, that was not part of my job description, right? And so I think it's, having that open mind and willingness to sort of grow and learn other things. And some people just might want to stay in their lane and do nothing else. But that's the cool thing about Organon, is that if you do want to get involved, and we have these things called gigs. So, I could do a 6-month gig in compensation or benefits and learn.
Okay, so it's like a sort of a rotation or a,
Yeah.
I get it. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. And that helps your career, or is neutral to your career, or detrimental to your career?
Well, I think in the end, it'll only help me. I've been very much a mobility person through and through, knowing a bit of immigration, knowing a bit of compensation, but being able to, once, I continue to grow and learn, to be able to say that I have this other skill set, I think it only helps.
Yeah, no, I get that. So I want to go back to a couple of things. The first is that, as you said, Organon was spun out of Merck. I know that was slightly before your time, but when they spun it out, did they sort of decide what policies they were going to have, or did they, as they say in the jargon, lift and shift it and then deal with it? And if so, how did you then change the policies to fit what was a different organization and undeniably a smaller organization?
Right. So yes, everything was lifted and shifted identically how it was at Merck. And that was one of the first reasons they brought me in last year as a consultant, was to look at the policies.
And when you say lifted and shifted, was that policies and vendors? You took everything with you?
Yes, policies and vendors. So, Merck's population, roughly, I think 350 assignees, 100,000 employees. Organon, we're 10,000 employees and 20 some odd expats. So very different programs. And so, last year when they brought me in as a contractor, that was the ask. The ask was, can you review our policies and see if they are fit for purpose? Are they fit for Organon's purpose? Are they benchmarked to the industry? So I spent, a few months going through those policies, talking to business leaders, talking to assignees and transferees and HR business partners, to gain their feedback. In the end, I didn't think the policies were still fit for purpose. They were on a point system. There were 5 different tiers. There was just a lot of overspending happening. So the new policies aren't live yet. I'm still sort of tweaking some of them, but we're basically swinging the pendulum back to the old days. And it's more like, here's core and here's situational. And what I mean by situational, it's like, if you have a pet, we're shipping your pet. If we have a kid, we're paying for their education. No longer having to choose points about how you need to be supported. So it's helping with better cost transparency, reporting, how people are using and needing services and things like that. So I listen, there's risk involved. There's a lot of change management involved to what we're doing, but I do think it's the right answer. And there's equity, because before, while there were guidelines for the tiers, ultimately the business could decide whatever tier they wanted. So this way, no matter your level, you're really being treated equitably across the board.
Cool. Okay, question that's coming from Rob Zeitz.
Hey, Rob.
Long-term friend of the show, and someone I guess you know too, Michelle. So Rob's asked this, and actually I might just tweak the question slightly. He says, do mobility programs, and I might go, does your program in particular, let's make it specific, have something like an ideal candidate profile describing what attributes make for a good or successful assignee to help assess each one and maybe help the business identify better candidates? In other words, do you have in your mind what good or great looks like in terms of a candidate?
A great question. No, we do not, but I might have to create that. No, we have not gotten that far. We've sort of been toying a little bit with the whole like intercultural like awareness and readiness. That's kind of as far as we've gotten. So no, but great thought, Rob.
It's a great thought. Maybe we ought to have these sort of these ideal personas of people that we want to move. I don't know. Well,
I'll say this
about it now. The ones that don't moan. I mean, that's a good start, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but I'll say this. So, like, senior leadership. It is. There is a sentiment around here that you can't end my assignment because my kid is still in school. They want that sentiment to go away, right? Like, this assignment was temporary to begin with. We're not keeping you on assignment just to have your child finish high school. And that's kind of been the mentality around here. So that's what I'm up against, trying to change that.
Okay, I mean, that sounds a bit like there might be a bit of sort of fast fighting going on. And I know that you're very keen to get away from firefighting in your role. So tell us a bit about that. How can mobility get away from firefighting? Could you only be truly strategic if actually you've got the time and space to do the strategic stuff? So how do you manage to put firefighting back in somebody else's box?
Well, when I was brought on, there was somebody sort of on the front lines, so that didn't change. That person is kind of on the front lines of initiations, repatriations, and I am playing in that strategic space. So we do sort of have clear delineation of roles and responsibilities from that perspective. But the other thing I will say to that point in terms of the firefighting is, we were, and we are still today, pretty heavily outsourced. One thing I would like to change, when you think about the people that we are sending on assignment, again, very, very senior leaders of this organization, my sentiment is, instead of handing them off, not even handing them off, just being like, okay, you're going to hear from the RMC and they're going to do your assignment briefing. I'm trying to insert mobility into the process earlier to say, hey, I'm here, we're here to help support you. And, should you need anything, please come to us, right? I think some of these firefighting cases are better solved from the outset internally, because ultimately, if it does go externally to an RMC, it's probably going to wind up back in my lap anyway. So I'd rather just deal with it from the get-go, and have that person know who I am and try and resolve whatever issue they're having directly.
Okay. The other thing that's interesting about your role at Organon is that most people in mobility sit within compensation. And that tends to be where people sit. Sometimes it's a center of excellence, what have you. but you don't. You're sitting in talent. Tell us a bit about that. And is that the first time you've been not in compensation in your mobility career?
I think it's the first time I'm sitting in talent. So mobility's been an interesting journey. I think like a lot of organizations don't know where to put mobility. So if you go back, say 18 months, mobility was sitting under benefits. And then there was some restructuring happening and they moved mobility under executive comp. Then I came along and these discussions, my job was created, and within another 6 months or within weeks of me arriving, a talent CoE was created. So it is the talent CoE is comprised of global mobility, culture and belonging, leadership development / learning and development, and then talent and performance management. So we are an interesting bunch. It was funny when we first got together as a CoE, we kind of looked at each other like, how do we work together? But as the months have gone by, we really have found, a bunch of intersections for us to work together and to collaborate. And it's been really cool.
That's absolutely amazing. And your job title is, as we talked about, Director of Mobility Strategy.
Right.
What does that mean on a sort of day-to-day basis?
Well, I think it's really sort of leading and changing the view of how mobility is used at Organon, right? I think it's using mobility as a strategy, as a talent strategy, and moving from that reactive to more proactive approach, and being more thoughtful, and mindful about who we're sending, why we're sending them. So, a lot of my time is spent working on the policies, one, but then two, sort of with the HR business partners, listening to them, hearing what's happening, working with my manager in that succession space, and really kind of creating this framework for and laying the foundation for what will be likely in effect come 2027. We're still sort of laying the groundwork and the messaging to the HR leadership team.
So to put it in simple sort of layman's terms, are you sitting down with the talent team to say, these 5 people or 10 people could be potential C-suite executives or business unit leaders, and we want to give them international experience, and therefore we are sending them to such and such a location to give them that career? Is that the sort of intentionality that you're looking at?
It's more having those discussions with the leaders and having them identify who those potential career people are. Right? It's not so much me, because I don't have that much insight into these folks yet. But it's now forcing the managers, the executives, to take a hard look at their population and force them into succession planning. Who's ready now? Who's ready in 3 years? Who could step in an emergency? And really kind of honing in on that. And then documenting it, right? Because before, this was all like an Excel spreadsheets, and now, really trying to use our Workday tool to develop that career architecture.
So you've got data behind this, so you're sort of you're monitoring.
It's being built.
Yeah, it's cool. What do you think, from everything you've seen both at Organon and earlier in your career, what do you think makes an ideal potential succession candidate, in terms of an international transfer? What are you looking for?
Well, I think it's, if you think about an international assignment, by definition, those assignments are temporary, right? They're going there to, maybe start a new office or transfer corporate knowledge or, whatever it might be. So if the idea is that that assignment is temporary in nature, what's the exit plan, right? Are they there to find and train and, have somebody in that office sort of work closely with them to be their successors so that they can then leave and move on to something else? So I think it goes back to those initial conversations, right? I think it's that succession planning should start before they even leave. that's an ideal state for me.
And I've got a question for the audience, actually. We did a poll in LinkedIn. I'm interested in the audience's views. And the question is this: in your organization, or if you're a service provider in maybe your major client's organization, is global mobility still stuck in firefighting mode all too often? And we gave people 3 choices. Yes, far too often. Sometimes it depends, or no, we are now more strategic. So out in the audience, tell us what your views are in your organization or your client's organization, or generally answer it how you want. Where do you think you are on that? Now, Michelle, tell us a bit about, I mean, I'm guessing that from an Organon point of view, you're going to say now more strategic, but tell us about where you think it is generally in the industry.
I think it depends on the organization. I think it depends on why, for each organization, why they're using mobility. I still think, yes, there's probably a lot of firefighting still happening, but I think with so much discussion about it, I would think it's moving kind of into the middle, that there's less, that there's a lot more awareness out there from, within the service provider lines. I think technology is kind of helping, providers and in-house sort of track and monitor some of these things so that they don't become, escalated fires to put out. And it's not to say that we don't have fires. I'm not there fighting them.
Okay. I mean, in terms of what the audience said, I've just got, so Laurie said pick up some of these comments. Laurie said, for the client I work in, I'd say it's more strategic, or at least definitely getting there. Well, that's good to hear. I mean, in terms of what the audience said when we actually did the poll, it was 65% said, yeah, it's far too often it's stuck in firefighting. 26% said it depends, and only 9% said it's now more strategic, which is actually quite sad in a way. Which brings me on to I suppose my next question is that actually, no, let's just pick up Ferzine's comment before we do. Ferzine said, we've got a couple of comments coming in. When senior leadership truly understands the full spectrum of global mobility business impact, employee experience and compliance, it shifts from an operational function to a strategic enabler of growth. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think it's right. That's exactly it. I think it's educating leaders, right? And leading with data, giving them data. I think it's important.
Yeah. So I suppose the question I wanted to ask you is that I think most people, given a choice, would want, or what Rob said, be like Smokey the Bear, prevent mobility fires before they start. Oh, good old Rob. Smokey the Bear, we've taken mobility a whole new level. And Janet saying, I think we're making progress. More discussion about the strategic value of mobility, especially since COVID, war, immigration, etc. And Pamela saying, sometimes it's what I'm seeing with my clients. Okay, so I think it depends on the staff we have. So let me just sort of just ask the question, Michelle, which is this, is that a lot of people, I think, want to be more strategic. I mean, that is our goal. You've done it. Okay. What tips would you give someone who wants to make mobility more strategic? How do you get about doing that?
Find a company that wants to embrace mobility as a strategy.
Well, there'll be a lot of people sending out their resumes now.
I mean, that's the hard part, right? Like I am so fortunate, and I know I'm fortunate, right? I stepped into this role that the company had already, decided this is what they wanted. So I just feel so grateful to be here. And it's difficult. I mean, the time I spent at Teva was difficult, right? I was told this is what they wanted to do, but 2 years in, it was like, I'm not so sure this is what we want. And I think a lot of people sort of experience this, that the company thinks they want it, and it's not necessarily an easy shift to do. So I mean, the best advice I can offer is really around continuing to give data to leaders, show your value, show them the data data that they have about how long people are out there, how much are they spending, do you have that sort of return on your investment? How many people are with your company 1 year, 2 years, 3 years post assignment? It's that data and getting that data in front of leaders that that has had kind of the biggest impact, I think, for me over the years.
So, I mean, obviously, I'm with Benevo. We're a tech company. In fact, you were obviously with Benevo a few years ago, and you got that tech bias. How important is the technology side of this, having data at your fingertips, having predictive analytics to actually making the right decisions and the ability to make it all a bit more strategic and a bit less firefighting-ish?
It's huge. It's huge. It's everything. Because right now I don't have a lot of data from a technology perspective. I have to be honest. We're on a lot of spreadsheets at the moment. So there's that side of it that I'm working to change as well. So it's key. I mean, it's to have that and not have to massage reports from one provider to another. It's it's everything. I mean, who wants to spend their time doing that? So I think that access to data, the speed that it can be done, the accuracy, it's all, I'm sure most people out there would know that the accuracy and the speed are probably the two big things when it comes to technology.
Yeah, I mean, I always feel that one of the problems people have in their jobs is that they can be too busy juggling all the balls in the air, and they're trying to keep all these balls up in the air. And the problem is that if you do that, you end up dropping balls because you've got too many in the air. And the easy solution is to try and put some of those balls down. And you can do that through outsourcing. You can do that through technology. There's all sorts of ways in which you can do it.
Right.
But if you can't put those balls down, you won't have the ability to get strategic. So we had a sorry.
I was just going to say the other piece to this, right? There is the strategy, but then there is the side of it that is the operational efficiencies, right? That I'm looking at as well. Where are we spending our time? How can we create more efficiencies to have more time to be strategic? So that is what's happening for the team, and challenging the team. And it's not just in mobility. I mean, this is a corporate, one of our corporate goals is that sort of operational efficiencies and where can we leverage them?
Yeah, okay. And I'm going to leave probably the last comment really to Galia Peretz, who's on the show some years ago now. Galia, it's great to see you again.
Hi, Galia.
Hey. And she said this: strategy takes time. So true. Before mobility can shift to a less tactical, future-focused approach, it's essential to examine the team's day-to-day reality. Do they have the resources and bandwidth to embrace big picture change? Are they too caught up in the weeds of daily detail? So I mean, great point, and we're going to be carrying on with that more next week with David Carmichael when we're talking about moving from the how of mobility to the why. But I'll leave the last word here to you, Michelle, as we reach our final minute. Your thoughts on Galia's thoughts?
Yeah, I think spot on. I think it's the resources, it's the skill set, it's having the resources, right? Like Organon created another headcount, right? Knowing that I was going to be focusing on this. We still have the day-to-day that needed to be focused on, right? But it's the company's willingness and openness to understand the importance of the function, and letting somebody focus on that piece, the strategy piece, because I don't. Head counts everything these days, unfortunately. So it's I think what Galia said is spot on about how organizations, if and when they want to create that what's the word I'm looking for, sort of opportunity and environment, and looking at mobility through a different lens.
Okay, we're actually pretty much out of time now. So, but this is a conversation to be continued. So we'll be continuing the conversation next week with David Carmichael as we talk about moving from the how of global mobility to the why of global mobility. All that remains is for me to bring onto our stage the amazing Julia Onzo Cole, of course, our wonderful Meredith Morris and our amazing producer, Tally Goran, and to say to everybody, thank you for listening to the show. We hope you've enjoyed it as much as we've had fun putting it all together. And we are back again next week. Take care, everybody, and have a great, great week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.